Hello and welcome to The Interface, the Hindus podcast to make sense of the accelerating pace of change underpinned by technology. I'm your host, John Xavier, the Hindu's technology editor. This episode is powered by AMD Ryzen AI. In the last 4 centuries, corporations have used innovative tools and advanced technologies to build products and services that have transformed entire societies. Thanks to globalisation, some of the multinational corporations today are larger than many nation-states. But how are these large enterprises approaching the current wave of artificial intelligence? That's the question I will be exploring with my guest today, Dr. Gopichand Katragadda. Dr. Katragadda is the president of Institution of Engineering and Technology. He is also the founder of Myelin Foundry, a deep tech startup. Previously, he was the Group Chief Technology Officer at Tata Sons, where he spearheaded innovation across the $100 billion conglomerate. Before his stint at Tata, Dr. Gopi led General Electric's Technology Center that built several innovative products for the American company. Dr. Gopi, very glad to have you on the interface. You have seen technology being deployed from close quarters at some of the largest organizations. Could you give a shape of that curve in large corporations, say between the dot-com boom and the current age of AI?
No, absolutely, John, and thanks for the opportunity. I'll just step a little back and start off even before these 2 decades. So my master's and PhD were with electromagnetic sensors and AI. So the electromagnetic sensors were providing the data which AI was crunching to get to decisions or to support analysis. So this was, we're talking about 1990 through 96. 90 to 92, NASA funded my research for the Space Shuttle main engine. And 92 to 96, the Gas Research Institute funded my research in the pipeline area, gas pipelines. So it's been around for some time. AI, and actually in its current form, neural networks. We were using something called multi-layer perceptrons, which were neural networks, which continue to be used today as well. And the variations and the progress and the current wave of technology we'll discuss later. But my first job also was with what we would call today as a startup. And this was in the US. I spent totally 12 years there, including 6 years working for this startup. So the career path for me was always technology. So the startup which I worked for was in deep tech. And then I came to with India being the move. And again, there across multiple areas, for us, looking at technology meant looking at various aspects, including what's happening in the biological field, what's happening in the computational field, what's happening in the materials field, and the intersections where we found most innovation. With the Tata Group, it was very unique because we had to bring together areas which were not possible for any one company to accomplish. So we brought multiple companies together and hence created an ability to innovate through technology and deep tech. And in my current startup, of course, deep tech is the core. AI is what we do. And AI at the edge, which is your laptop or your mobile or your automotive, without having to go to the cloud, is where we excel. Happy to discuss that in much more detail.
Sure. Thank you so much. So if you could just go a little bit more, because I just wanted to understand how this technology is kind of shaping up. If you could give some sense on how do large organizations where you are part of, how do they think about technology? If you want to go back to your time in Tata Sons, how do you pick a particular technology and say, this is where we want to implement certain things? What's the thinking like?
Yeah. So I'll go broader. The larger companies, one way to look at it is a 70-20-10 approach. 70% of what we did had a market outlook. That means that the technology would get into the market within 3 years. 20% of the work we did had outlook where the technology would get into the market 3 to 5 years. And 10% of what we did was actually ready to serve, which means that it would get into the market immediately. So beyond 5 years, large companies included very rarely invested money. Right, so that's one way to think about technology. What we call deep tech are those technologies which will get into the market 3 to 5 years from today.
I see. So, but if you were to look at large corporations, deep tech will definitely come to that. So, is this cycle or the timeline, is it shrinking given the pace of technology that's happening?
The impact is increasing. The timelines still remain because of various aspects, including regulations and safety. And by the way, John, deep tech is not exclusive to startups. Even large companies, when they work in areas which take the 3 to 5 years to get into the market, it is deep technology. So it is deep tech.
Right. And when we talk about the shrinking, there was also the time when I want to pick up from, let's say 2019 is when you basically move on from Tata Sons and then you step into your role in IET and then in Myelin Foundry. How, from that vantage point, and I think Chat GPT and all the whole host of generative AI have just kind of landed, how are a similar set of organizations, conglomerates I'm talking about, that use deep tech and also startups, how are they either adapting this new technology or how are they adopting new strategies to, the way to look at data and AI, and how is that deployment happening?
Yeah. So the way one can think about it is consumers as well as businesses. So if you look at OpenAI and what they've done and reach so many millions of users in such a short time, that's a B2C business, and the adoption rate of consumers is reasonably faster. Today, you can very safely say that globally, including India, anybody who is using a mobile phone is a consumer of deep tech AI and generative AI. And for various reasons. So if you're using Facebook, there is face recognition as an example, or any social media platform. So from that standpoint, the penetration is very high and uniform across the globe when it comes to a consumer. When it comes to a business using a deep tech in their business operations, for example, like on the factory floor, the penetration in developed economies is about 30-35%. In India, that is on basis of a survey. In India, I would say that the penetration will be less than 10%. And globally, in developed economies, that 35% will very soon hit 70%. And in India, it is not going at that pace in Indian companies.
And why is that divergence happening, given that we have been through the services wave? And India rode on it really well, which actually increased the space that we had in that sector. When you compare the same thing in the artificial intelligence space, what are some of the things that we are not doing right, and what are some of the areas that we should kind of step up in terms of matching up with the advanced economies?
Yeah, so it is no different than what happened during the IT boom. And the IT services, the companies which provided IT services largely to global clients who were strategically leading in those areas, and we were providing the IT services. But Indian companies itself, including those IT companies, were not using those similar mature IT technologies within their businesses. Same thing will happen in AI also, is that we will be the world's provider for AI services, application development and data annotation and customization and so on. But the question is, are we in Indian businesses using the same? The answer will be that it will follow the same trend unless something major different happens. I can tell you that as a startup, it's very difficult to get an Indian conglomerate to use AI in their business. They will be happy to use a product which comes after it has been tested for a couple of years from the global markets.
Is it the same case across conglomerates, given that you're also seeing the whole landscape through IET? Are Indian conglomerates kind of in a different bucket altogether, or do global organizations like for GE, for instance, are they also looking at AI in a similar fashion like Indian conglomerates do?
No, GE was using AI 25 years ago. We were using AI to detect tumors in from CT and MR data 25 years ago. So the investment into technology from organizations in the US, even in China and in Korea, is very high. So the R&D investment into by these companies and the government exceeds 4% in all the cases that I mentioned. In India, it is less than 1%. In fact, it is less than 0.8% now because the GDP is growing and our investments have remained stagnant. So it is a significant difference. The amount we are investing in technology and the amount developed economies are investing in technology. Talent-wise, we are shoulder to shoulder to anyone in the world. In fact, generative AI is built on a particular paper called Attention is All That You Need. And then that paper led to the building of transformer models, which are the basis for the large language models and the models that are used in image generative AI as well. So this paper was written by Vaswani et al. It is Ashish Vaswani et al. So it is not that we lack the ability to do research. We also have government trying to put in money into AI and startups and large companies. Of course, the implementation has to be better. But the large companies in India are failing in their duty to invest into technology and AI.
And the primary reason is still not clear. Is it more kind of a wait and watch approach that is keeping them down, or is it a significant amount of upfront investment you have to put in a capability like that, which has not been tested earlier? What's the mindset in the I'd say kind of inside the C-suite mind, or in the boardroom? How are they looking at this?
No, you are absolutely right. And to be fair, it requires significant investment. As an example, OpenAI got a $10 billion investment, right? So it is not million, it's $10 billion investment, not a billion, it's $10 billion investment from one company. So this kind of risk taking will require some more economic growth for us. But we don't have to do this amount of risk taking. So investment in India would be 3 billion. Let's say divide by 3 would be 3 billion. But 3 billion is also not required. Even 1 billion is not required. Even 300 million, you will be hard pressed to find companies going to invest in a startup. Right? You will not find.
That's that's quite gloomy to look at. Interestingly, McKinsey had a report about the potential economic impact on generative AI could be upwards of 2.4 trillion to about 4.4 trillion, which is slightly lesser than the GDP of Great Britain. When I think of that, two things are happening. One is the people who really have big pockets are the large corporations who can bring that kind of investment into India. One is they're waiting and holding up. And the second thing is actualization of, or rather using this nascent technology is also delaying. So this could actually have an impact in terms of India's position globally, in terms of being a leader, like how it was in the services sector. Do you have an idea on how this kind of thing will play out in the next 3 or 4 years' time?
No, I'm not gloomy at all. I think that because we have talent, it will play out reasonably well. I'm also using the opportunity to challenge large companies to come forward and be more risk-taking. And at the same time, as currently in the startup ecosystem, it's not just about my startup. I'm part of the startup ecosystem through CII and NASCOM. It's also the ability of the startups to truly go after deep tech and create global first products rather than a me too for Indian markets. Those are also required. but I think there needs to be more in the startup world who are taking on these risks. So that's also a challenge. But the way it will shape up in India with intervention will be that we will do the following, that we will be the capital for annotating data. So be it voice data, image data, or other forms of data, or simulating data. These are all areas that we have great capabilities in. And we'll create jobs which are much required, not just in semi-urban areas, but rural areas as well. Because these jobs can be performed from wherever people are. That doesn't require mass migration into cities. And then that, I think, will be 70% of the opportunity. 20% of the opportunity will be in cities, creating applications for the world, using algorithms which are developed wherever they are developed. 10% should be the ability to develop new algorithms which will take the world by a storm. And this has to be done in collaboration, at least with the academic world in India. And again, that's a big lacuna in order to be able to match the global standards of creating new algorithms. So interventions are required in the academic world to ensure that we are getting ahead on the ability to deliver new algorithms. Interventions are required to ensure that there is adequate investment into the startup world, and there is adequate overall R&D investment across the country. So we are, like I said, less than 0.8%. We should at least get to 2% where we never were.
And this particular timeline, how soon, or is there a specific deadline, or we missed the bus? Do you have an estimate around from 0.8% to 2%?
No, it takes time. So we have definitely missed the bus and missed multiple waves of economic possibilities. So while I agree that we created job in the IT wave, we were not on the top of the value chain. The top of the value chain were the Apples and the Microsofts of the world, and they were creating value far greater for the nation than we were creating with IT services. So we shouldn't be content with the same kind of model. We need to aim to be on the top of the value chain. For that to get from 0.8 to 2% will take a minimum of 5 years. But in the last 5 years, we went from 0.8 to 0.7%. So it requires a lot of effort.
And to get this step up into the 2% trajectory, I'd say, is what sort of things are needed in terms of skilling? So one, as you pointed out, the lacuna in academics. So what are some of the steps that would be ideal to take in terms of the order of priority of, say, 1, 2, 3?
Yeah. So the fact is that I mentioned this earlier, we have significant talent. Given the population, even a small percentage is a large number. So there have been people who have voiced that there isn't sufficient skill to take their research levels up to 2%. I disagree with that. Every researcher doesn't have to be a PhD degree holder. You have researchers, good researchers who are undergrad degree holders, good researchers who are doing masters, who are doing their PhD, and even including diploma holders are innovative people. So we need to expand the thought process around innovation and be more inclusive. And we have the talent. Talent is not the problem. The problem is in the investment and the investment reaching the right people and having a transparency around that, including for government investments.
Right.
And on that note, a word about AMD Ryzen AI processors. With integrated AI capabilities, these processors are designed to empower individuals and businesses alike. Imagine a world where your computer anticipates your needs, streamlines your workflows, and fuels creative problem solving. With AMD Ryzen AI, you unlock hyper-personalization, leadership multitasking, and cost optimization. These are just a few ways AMD Ryzen AI is redefining the future of work.
Keeping on the talent aspect, again, I'm taking you back to that McKinsey report on the economic potential of generative AI. Is in fact they have redid their analysis. So earlier they had said that AI could impact about 50% of, to give the right word, is like the 50% of the working hour of productive hours of an employee. And this has actually gone up to about 60 to 70%. And as more generative AI gets embedded into the work, it's going to have a significant impact. So when we talk about skilling, we are also talking about a change in the knowledge that goes into skilling. So there is a bit of a dilemma here. So what do you skill a person for in the next 5 or 10 years horizon?
Yeah. So the good thing again, John, is that the ability of young Indians, since we're talking about that, to learn and to be relevant is extremely high. I had a lot of young Indians in my company. I've seen a lot of them as part of my IET role as well. And I've seen similar capability in Hong Kong. I've seen great capability in UK. I've seen the desire in Dubai. So the ability to learn has only improved with the generative AI and AI alongside. And it has fortunately gone in tandem. So I don't think we need to spend too much time intellectually thinking about how to skill. It is happening. And it is happening at a pace that will outskill. What we need to be worried about are the folks who have been in the business for some time, how to skill them, because they will very soon be irrelevant unless that happens. The generation which is coming in, their skilling, I think, is happening organically.
That's good to know. So the organic skilling is happening, but in terms of, I have to take you back to the Cromptonville shutting down, where large organizations that run large learning centers are shutting down, are changing, also because of the tenure of CEOs and almost all employees are shrinking. So how do you view that the rise of AI and the learning's impact through corporations and through individuals? Is that also changing? So people are going to be more individual learners versus a corporate entry style learners?
See, I've been to Crotonville. I've talked about it. GE Crotonville was the mecca of learning. I would say I still hold it in extremely high esteem. The ability to learn from each other will always remain important, and that is not specific to a skill like, let's say, Python programming or using a particular kind of a neural network, let's say ResNet or deep neural network or whatever it might be. It is number one, domain knowledge. AI is going to be only relevant in the world of large language models if you know how to do the prompt engineering. And prompt engineering is not about the prompt, it is about the domain knowledge. You need to be able to ask the right things, and you'll only be able to ask the right things when you are very deep into the domain. And you learn the domain from each other, you learn the domain from the previous generation, and you learn the domain from other companies in the same field. And so part of our learning in this corporate setups was to be able to travel, visit other friendly companies, do market analysis, learn from each other, learn from senior leadership within the company, learn about culture, learn about leadership, and learn about contribution to the society beyond a skill. So these are what will differentiate the worker of the future.
Good to know. And could you focus a bit on, given your current position with the Myelin Foundry, how is the startup ecosystem evolving in India, and what exactly do we do through deep tech? Are we only in the annotate and kind of train the large language models? You mentioned about algorithms, one area that we should be developing, which is the small area that we hold a space in. But could you just give a sense on how this ecosystem is developing?
Yeah. No, I think it's developing well, John. I take an example of Myelin Foundry itself and then go beyond. So at Myelin Foundry, what we said we'll do is we will deliver AI on small compute because that's what you have in mobile phones, in automotive and the like. So to be able to run AI models on this amount of compute is significantly arduous. So you have to do many things. One is you have to train knowing that the AI will run on small compute. You have to use algorithms which will be suitable for small compute. And you have to distribute the work on the small compute in a manner that is very unique to each of the various endpoints that you will execute. So the mobile phone is not one uniform architecture. There are thousands of mobile phones with as many architectures. So you have to figure out where you're running, how you're running, and how do you get the real-time performance even on video. Right, so these are the challenges that we have picked to solve, and I'm happy to say that 80% of our customers are global. The top OTT players, the top automotive players leverage us globally, which means that even though they have AI teams, we are able to provide capabilities which they enjoy leveraging from India. So there are other companies like us who have taken on the ability to provide global first products from these shores. We also protect our IP first in India and then protect it globally as a way to say that this is also a model which is possible. We are headquartered in India while we have an office in the US. Again, to say that this is also possible, very few companies do either of this. Usually the IP model is to first protect in the US and then protect elsewhere through the PCT route. We first protect in India and then use the PCT route, which is Paris Convention Treaty, to protect in other jurisdictions. And similarly, we still have remained headquartered in India. We want to deliver in this manner. So when you say annotation is not deep tech at all. Just because you're doing it for AI doesn't make you a deep tech company. Because if it is something which anybody can do and very quickly set up, it is not going to take you 3 years of development effort to get something into the market. It does not get classified as deep tech. So all AI is not deep tech. Deep tech is where you're taking on challenges like I described, which will take time to get it into the market and hence create a barrier of entry for other people globally.
Good to know. You mentioned about the IP securing part, about how being headquartered in India is a shift. Could you kind of expand on that idea? Well, why were companies earlier doing that? What was the allure for startups earlier, and is that changing, and why?
It will change, hopefully with more people like us doing it. But the reason is actually very practical, and I actually support those who are doing it as well, because you protect in the markets that you want to sell. So if your market is going to be for deep tech, going to be the US, we'll protect in the US first. And if it is going to be Japan, we'll protect in Japan first. And like I said, in deep tech, very difficult in B2B space to sell in India. In B2C space, there are a lot of Me Too companies which take something which have happened elsewhere and bring it to India. And their IP is difficult to claim anyway because patent protected is either prior art or protected globally. Protected in multiple jurisdictions. So hence, we are able to create IP mostly in B2B space. In that B2B, there are opportunities to do it in B2C space, but so far it has not been leveraged as much. In the B2B space where we play, since the markets are global, people will want to protect globally first.
And that usually, and US becomes the place where they want to go for it.
Yeah, US has been a place where people are willing to take risks and do things first.
Right. And how do you see China in this space? Given that the whole trade war has happened, it's blown away, and then the entire economy is also going through kind of an overall. Where does that nation come in sense of the overall deep tech ecosystem?
Yeah, so if you look at AI as an example of deep tech, the contributors have been, the recent wave of deep tech started off actually in Canada. with some of the work around deep neural networks. And from there, like I described, the transformer networks and the papers which went behind that were a little more global in nature between UK and the US. And US picked up work which was done academically in UK as well, and took it first into the market at the scale they did. So from that standpoint, if you look at China, they have been very quick followers, and ability to take it to scale has been very high. In AI, there is one more aspect, which is data, and the ability to get significant amount of data and ability to put it into use has been China's advantage. So if you look at recognition kind of algorithms and the application of those algorithms, China has done extremely well. So from an engineering standpoint, if you look at it, the ability to scale, China has done very well. The ability to innovate, US, UK, Israel, they have done very well. From a talent standpoint, all of this has been powered significantly by global talent, including Indians, and significantly Indians.
That's an interesting thing. So when you say talent, so we are going from India, people are going to set up their own deep tech startup in China, you're saying, or they're academically contributing?
Not necessarily in China. I was talking more across the globe. So US and UK particularly. In Hong Kong, for example, also there is a very global ecosystem, and people do converge. There is a good amount of diversity, but the diversity is most in the countries I mentioned, which is USA, UK, and even Israel. Israel has a different kind of diversity, and they benefit from that.
Interesting. I also slightly want, given that you mentioned about how these companies or countries are organizing, I want to get your more deeper insights on how is AI playing a role in boardrooms, specifically, like in terms of corporate governance, for instance, because data is coming into play. There's a lot of international policies that are being worked out. If you know about, of course, you know about EU's both data protection at the same time, their new AI Act, all that is coming together. How important is this topic becoming as part of boardrooms in large organizations?
No, I'm fortunate to have been and continue to be on several boards. So happy to share that. Number one is obviously how do you leverage AI, generative AI in the boardrooms. Number two is how do you ensure that we are compliant. And like you rightly mentioned, there is a data aspect to it. There is end use aspect to it, and we have to be compliant all the way in between as well. So let me start with the second part, which is compliance. So nations are quickly racing towards various stands on regulation. So at one end of the spectrum, you have the European Union, where they have taken a very citizen-centric view and citizen privacy view. So as an example, you cannot recognize faces in public, even if it is for police. According to the European Union Act, the directions that they are taking. So the reason for that is technically accurate, because with AI, even if you get 98% accuracy, 2% over several million people, when you're looking at large public spaces, will cause inconvenience to quite a few. So if you're using it for policing and you're pulling out 2% of the people on suspicion of looking like somebody, that's a large number of people. So it's well thought through. On the other end of the spectrum, you have Japan, which is taking a very business-centric view of AI regulations. And again, it's the right thing technically. So if you look at the Copyright Act, what they're saying is that any input into AI is not protected by Copyright Act. Because it's an input into AI, it is not being published. It might be protected by other forms of law, like you cannot steal data and then use it and claim that I can use it because it's not protected by Copyright Act. Copyright Act doesn't protect it, but some other law might protect if somebody is stealing data. but they're very clear that input into AI models will not be copyright protectable, and output will be copyright protectable only if it matches some output, some other person's work. Right? It is protectable as per the Copyright Act, and I think that's again an astute way of looking at things. In India, we are looking at a June launch of our own regulations. And in India, I believe that we should take a view that regulations should enable job creation. And we should do all the things to protect, at the same time, ensure job creation. So as an example, if I can create 2 hour per day, 5 day a week, or even 3 day a week job, where somebody is putting on a wearable and the data is monetizable, then I should enable that to happen in the quickest possible manner at a payment which is the most fair, and allow it to happen all through India. That is the way you think about regulations in India, create jobs.
That's an interesting perspective. So it's sort of coalescing between the Japanese way and a bit on... I don't know whether US is still going to have something, but they're still trying to draft something one after the other.
So the US takes a lead when it comes to healthcare. So their regulations have already focused on insurance. For example, today I can put a wearable on you and tell, how healthy you will be 2 to 3 years from today, right, using AI and predictions. But the US does not allow insurance to use that kind of data to determine your premium.
So the predictive aspect of it is kind of, I'd say, short-circuited or kept to the minimum.
Yeah, the predictive aspect of which is detrimental to your privacy and your, you might not, the predictive aspect doesn't mean that you will not exercise and be fine, for the next, 50 years. So just based on a predictive aspect of AI based on your wearable data today to determine your insurance, again, technically is not right. So on all these aspects, I, as an engineer, agree with the directions they're taking. And so I think all of them are right. There is no contradictions per se. The focus has been different. And again, I repeat, India's focus should be create jobs.
Right. And so how do you think for an organization that's global in nature, multinational corporations, have to wade through these multiple different ways in which people are looking at AI with different lens? How difficult is it going to be for organizations to handle this kind of policy changes?
Yeah, see, if you look at it at each policy level and, trying to understand and implement, definitely it's going to require some effort. But if you look at it as a principle of doing ethical data, of doing end-use applications which are in concurrence with present-day thinking about ethics, you will be fine. Because everything is boiling down to, are we doing things ethically? Are we doing things which are inclusive? Are we doing things so that they do not exclude? Right? These should be the principles of any company anyway. But I do think that in addition to having the basic approach right, you want to make sure that legally your lawyers are looking and making sure that engineers are not only trained but taking a lead on these matters.
All right. Thank you so much. So I think we have covered quite a range of topics, starting from how you started off with G and then your role at IET and Myelin Foundry, and how deep tech is evolving and where India stands. And I thank you so much for your time for taking us through this whole landscape. It's been a pleasure interacting with you, Dr. Gopi.
My pleasure, John, and good luck. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to the Interface podcast powered by AMD Ryzen AI. Please do check out amd.com for more details about the product. For more such episodes on technology and innovation, tune in to the Interface on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts from. Do share your comments with us at the Interface at thehindu.co.in. To keep yourself updated with the latest tech, please go to thehindu.com or follow us on all social media platforms. Thank you.